How's everybody doing? You say Freebird already? You were screaming? My goodness gracious. All right, here's what we're doing tonight. First of all, welcome to the XL. We're very glad to have you out here. This is the second night of our series called Tattoo. One of the reasons that we're doing a series called Tattoo is because we believe every person in this room has a story. And as they are singing this song, Who Are You? The concept is that who you are today is a direct whatever result of the story that God has developed in your life over time. Some of you have had some really tough times. Some of you had some great times. Some of you have just had everything's wonderful for you. But no matter what it's been, it got you to where you are today. And the coolest thing about that is that God has developed a story in you that can be used to help other people find Him. That's what He does. So some of you have come in here before, and we've heard people come in here before that says, well, that come in and say, well, I don't feel like I'm worthy of what God has to offer. You know what? None of us are worthy of what God has to offer. But the truth is, all of the things that happen in our life and all the things that have happened in your past are there, and He uses all those to make you exactly who you are today. And if you'll let Him, He can use that story to change the lives of the people around you. If you let Him. It's one of the things I'll say one of the things that we'll talk about later is the truth that your story, whatever that story may be, whatever your past looks like, whatever your future you think looks like, somebody around you needs to hear your story. And somebody's going through something now that you went through 10 years ago. So God is developing that story in you. That's what tattoo is about, and that's where it comes from. And we'll be talking about that a little bit more throughout the night. One thing I will let you know is we had a spot for our 1st through 6th graders that's through this door and up the steps. And here's what I'm recommending to you. Tonight, we're going to have someone actually receiving a tattoo on stage. So, yeah. Hey, here's some other news. It ain't me. There you go. Yep. We're going to have to do a little something special to make that thing happen. But here's the deal. If you have a 3rd grader sitting in here with you or whatever, and you don't want them watching a tattoo take place, then we have a perfect spot for them. That's where they can learn the most from our night anyway, so that'll be upstairs. Anybody below that, 1st grade or kindergarten down, goes right through here. Preschoolers right through here, they'll take care of them. But guys, we hope that you make yourself at home tonight, and we hope that you are comfortable knowing that you are cared for, and no matter where you come from, no matter where your story starts, no matter what your story has in the past, God's using it today to develop someone and something that He can use for His kingdom and His future. Now, what I want to do tonight, because of the time frame, we're going to start this process now. I'm going to introduce Mr. West to you right over here, and he's going to come on stage with, yep, give it up. Yep. All right. He doesn't like to talk much, but I will say, now tell me exactly what business is yours? Eternal Expressions. And you've done a number of tattoos probably on people in this very room at this point, right? Yeah. Anyway, Eternal Expressions, if you're looking for a tattoo, that's where you need to be, right? Yeah. This is Wes, and this, my friend, is Randy Todd. Come on up, Randy. Ooh. Just give us a flex like that. Oh, yeah. Oh. Randy's been preparing the bicep all day long for this. But he's going to sit right here. Wes is going to do his work, and he's going to give him a tattoo on his right shoulder during our process tonight. And they're going to start now, so we can make sure we don't run out of time for that. But the message will center around this process taking place over here. So you guys go ahead and get started, and they're going to keep on playing, so they won't bother you a bit. And you need anything during the process, you let me know, unless it's painful, and then I'll get someone else to do it. So whatever you need. All right, guys, thank y'all for being here tonight. Give it up for Randy right now. Yeah. Hey, make sure the video's all the painful stuff. Anything that looks like it might hurt, make sure that video's on and ready to go. Guys, thanks for being here. Keep on rocking us, fellas. I got to tell you, I've been to lots of places called church in my life. And I cannot imagine why you would ever want to miss one of these again. That's just all I'm saying. Randy, you feeling good over there? All right. You're doing good till the started, right? And then it all kind of changes at that point. Guys, I want to tell you. Pardon me. I'm going to get my advertisement off the stage. Romans chapter 8, verse 28 is some of the best news in the world for me and you. Rachel used it last week in her time of sharing and all that was going on. And I want to say it to you again tonight and read it out loud for us. It's going to pop up on the screens maybe. There you go. I don't know if we could override tattoo time by stuff. You got it working okay over there? Craig is having a little technical difficulty. Just to let you know. I'd hate for Randy to leave halfway through. Walk kind of like this. So, anyway, Romans chapter 8, verse 28 says, "And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them." Guys, what you need to understand is everything in your life is part of your story. And everything that's gone wrong in your life is still part of your story. And no matter where you've been and where you come from and what has happened to you or around you or through you, God can use that today to make your story something that grows his kingdom. Nobody else excited about that? See, because I know that sometimes in my life I've gotten to that point of, God, I cannot imagine you using any of this for any of you. And I know that in your life you've gotten to that point of, God, I've made so many mistakes and done so much ridiculous stuff that I have. TK always amens at the perfect time. That we recognize and we believe that there's no way in the world God can use us and our story for anything good. But here's the deal. You got to pay attention to me. They're going to fix this, and then we'll see Randy half tattooed before the night's up, I'm sure. We're all staying until he's done, by the way, so whatever. We'll order pizza about midnight and be fine. But the truth is, all of the things about your life are here and in that life on purpose. And here's one of the coolest things, your testimony, your story. We always talk about how to share your testimony, and we recognize that some people that come to XL don't go to the traditional church world, and that's why we have XL, and you hear somebody go, you should share your testimony, and you're like, I don't know what that means. Your story is the most important thing you ever have to share with anybody. And no matter what your story is, somebody needs to hear it. And I learned this because about a long time ago now, I was working in a different place with a youth group, and here's my story, and I will share my story with you because it's kind of interestingly different from most of the people that we try to reach with XL. We try to reach a crowd of people, you being a crowd of people that don't really want to go to the traditional church setting. Most of you come here because we're just stupid enough to do like tattoos on stage. We do things like Pimp My Ride, and we put the word pimp up on a billboard and get phone calls, and we're told not to do that. My story is I've been in church since 9 months before I was born. Okay? I mean, and almost every Sunday since then. And I gave my testimony one time. I told my story one time, and my story doesn't have any drugs in it, doesn't have any alcohol in it, doesn't have any tattoos in it, because I'm what most people would consider a total coward. I get that, no problem. But none of that's in my story. My story is that Jesus has always been working in my life and always doing something. I've been in church all my life. And, you know, the worst things I ever do is get, like, really, really fast speeding tickets. You know what I'm talking about? Like, that's the terrible thing. But here's the deal. After I gave my story that night, a young lady comes up to me and says, I want you to know that I appreciate your testimony because I never knew that my testimony was worth anything because I've never done anything really wrong. And, you know, most testimonies you get up and you got to spend 45 minutes talking about how the drugs got you and this and this and this. And you know what? We're going to hear a testimony in a minute about some things like that. But every story is meant for somebody. And when that girl comes up and says, I'm just glad that I can still tell my story even though I haven't done all that stuff. And God is still using me. Listen to me. If you are willing to give your life to Jesus Christ and allow him to develop the story in you, he will use you to grow his kingdom. That is a promise. That's a guaranteed fact. If you'll do your part, he'll do his part, and he'll use your story to grow his family. Because that's why he develops the story in you. Why do we have someone getting a tattoo on stage? Why is the tattoo so big in this? I believe that the majority of people that get tattoos get them to represent some part of their story and some part of their life. And I'm going to bring Dana up here for just a second. If you'll kind of cruise on this way. Big Daddy, if you'll come down here and sit on the front, we'll pull you up here next. Dana has a tattoo, and we're going to show a picture of it right up here. Yes, there you go. And what I'm going to ask her to do is explain very quickly. Come on up. All the way to the top, girl. You can't do it from down there. I'm going to ask you to explain what this picture is, and then explain to us why this is the tattoo that you picked to put on you.
No one. Can everybody hear me?
Hang on. Let me check. It's on. I got to make sure. These things are tricky. My part's on. There we're going.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. All right, this is Michael, Archangel Michael. And if you'll see down there, he's got his foot on Satan's head. And this is a major representation in my life because, about 6 years ago was the end of a big part of my life, 2.5 years with a meth pipe in my mouth, 24/7 basically. So I was a major drug addict for 2.5, 3 years. And we had a nice little no-knock search warrant served on us and taken to jail. And that was God, because nothing else was going to stop me from doing what I doing. When I do something, I do it right, and I do it all the way. So I was facing personally 16 years in prison. And God decided that wasn't what he wanted for me. He wanted me to keep my children. He wanted me to clean up my life. And for a couple of years after deciding that, I'm not going to go to jail. I'm going to stop doing this drug. I was like, okay, I'm going to try this avenue. I'm going to try that avenue. Well, there's no other avenue but laying it before God's feet, totally and utterly surrendering. God, I can't do this on my own. Nothing but God can take it from you. And whenever he finally got into my head enough to make me realize that I had to put my face to the floor and pray and give it to him totally and honestly and ask him to take away the urges and all the triggers and to know who to get away from and all those things. This represents the angel that sits on my demon.
Awesome.
And I've been clean clean from relapsing, because I relapsed. I relapsed until I finally laid it down and said, this is it. I can't do it. You got to take it. And that last time I relapsed, I finally did that for real. And God's got that angel sitting on my demon. Amen. For about 4 years, 4.5 years.
4.5 years. So Dana, you would say to us that is definitely a representation of victory of what God did. Cool. Thank you, ma'am. Come on here, Big Daddy. We don't have a picture of Big Daddy's. We're just going to show it on his arm here. Turn around and show the crowd.
Actually,
it's on.
It's on. Okay. Actually, I want to show you the first one. and I've got a thing of John 3:17 with the cross and the crowns and everything. And I have that on there because most of us Christians, we think of John 3:16 and we put a period behind that. And that's the basis of our salvation, and it is. But he goes on to tell you in John 3:17, he said, "For he didn't come into the world to condemn the world, but that through him the world be saved." And I thought that was very good because the people who we minister to, I can go up to them and say, God did not condemn you, neither do I. And the second tattoo I have that I'll show is a picture of Jesus Christ. And I like this of a local artist, Reverend Frank Murphy. He actually drew this picture, and I was sat there and I looked at the picture one day, and I couldn't keep from not looking at it. And I said, went up to Frank and I said, man, that's just so simple and so clear. And I got thinking about it. That was what Jesus' message was to us. It was so simple, but yet it's so clear. And I asked him if I could possibly have this tattooed on my body, and he agreed to it. And I also have it for when I'm riding my motorcycle, as if I pass you on the right side, then people can look at it and they can see Jesus on me.
Thank you, sir. I also want you to understand, Dana had some scripture verses that she was going to walk through, but, you know, when you get to stage, you go crazy and forget a lot of that kind of stuff, and we all do that. But put Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 up there is one of hers, I believe. Is that the one back there? Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that is so easily trips us up, and let us run with perseverance and endurance a race God has set before us. Guys, that's her verse, you know, and she's talking about let's throw off the junk and the sin that holds us back. And you know what? One of the things I was talking to Bill, her husband, before this, and he said it was a huge thing for her that she would not put that tattoo on her until she was clean, until she knew that there would be no relapse and knew that there would be no other issues, and she knew that God had defeated the enemy in her. Guys, that's what tattoos are. And I believe that, and that's what your story is. And that's why we wanted to relate this whole thing to tattoos on a person's body. That's how God develops your story. Let's look at the things that actually go into the development of a tattoo. And I checked this with Wes, so I think I'm right on most of them. First of all, you got to have somebody that commits to having a tattoo. Anybody ever been tattooed and didn't know it? You know what I'm talking about? At some point in time, you've got to commit. At some point in time, Randy had to decide, okay, I'll be the one. I'll sit in the chair and I will get the tattoo. And I know some of you have gone to the tattoo place and you've sat down in the chair and you've thought, great, great, great. And he put the stencil thing on you and you're great, great. And then he goes, and you were gone. You know, he's laughing because he's like, yeah, 2 of them right here. I see them already. But that's what some people do. You know what? That relates to us as children that are trying to live for our God. Number 2 thing you got to do is somebody's got to design the tattoo. You probably, I don't know how, you know, Wes is probably super good at this, but you may not want to just walk in there and go, do what you want to do today, and hold your arm up. You know, you may end up with something permanently stuck to your body that you didn't plan on having there. Somebody has to design what's going on your body. Number 3, as we walk through these things, they apply the stencil, which is what he did first, and he puts a stencil on, and that's not the permanent part. That's as far as Jared would get, you know what I'm saying? And you get that stencil, and you're like, oh, that would look great. Now let's wash that off so I can go about my business. But you have to do that for the outline of what you're trying to put on the arm. 3rd thing or 4th thing is you got to make it permanent. This will be the process we're going through now. Randy, how's that going for you? Hurts a little bit? You're not showing it at all, by the way. You're quite the man. You're quite the man. Last thing is, you know what you do with the tattoo after it's completely done? What do you do with it? You let it heal. After it's completely done, what do you do with it? After it's healed, what do you do with it? You show it off. Especially if it's on your arms. For those of you that have those that you don't want to show off, we're fine with that. That's like Big Daddy said, I got one here that I'll show you. Yeah, because he's got others. We don't want to talk about that. You know, we don't want to talk about that. But truthfully, if you're going to get one, you want to show it off. And I want to walk through how this stuff relates to our relationship with Christ, because if we're going to do a whole series called Tattoo, and we're going to deal this whole thing, we better be able to relate it to how we live and how we walk through this. Number one thing, you got to commit to let God develop your story. You got to commit to get a tattoo. You have to commit to say, God, I'm going to give you my life, and you develop in me whatever you want me to have in me. You know what? That's a commitment from you. Because there are a lot of people walking out in this world thinking, you know what, I would commit to him, but I don't really want to. I think I'm just going to take care of myself for a little while. And I think I'm just going to move on. And whenever I get to where I'm going next, that'll be my story. And then whenever I get to the next spot, I'll make that my story, and we'll keep on trucking. But God says if you want to be his child and you want to live for him, you have to commit to allow him to develop your story. We talk about that all the time. We talk about giving your life to Jesus in a personal and intimate relationship with him. And if you haven't, then you haven't yet committed to let him tell your story and design your story. But just like Randy had to make the decision, just like many of you have made that decision when you go in and sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do this. That's the time that you make a decision to allow someone to put something on your arm, on your leg, on your wherever that is going to be permanent for you. But it's your decision. And many of you tonight are still needing to make that final decision to say, Jesus, you can develop my story from this day forward, and I'll do whatever you say do. That's number one thing that relates to this. You got to make a commitment to actually have it. Number two, you got to accept God's design for you. You have to actually accept God's design for you. Because why? Because God has a plan that is what? Better than your plan. You know that? You know that God's design for your tattoo is better and cooler and more awesome than your design for your tattoo? Do you know that what God has planned out for your life is better than what you have planned out for your life? Hey man, I'm going to be the biggest rock star ever created. You know what? God's got something even better for you than that. I'm going to be the best teacher ever created on the planet Earth. You know what? God's got something even better for you than that. I'm going to be the president of the United States one day. Go get them. God's got something even better for you than that. You hear me? But here's the deal. You've got to decide to let him design you. Because if you don't, you will never accept your story as it is being told and written inside of you. You'll never get up in the morning and go, yeah, that was tough, but it's all part of God's design. No, every time you have a chance, you're going to change God's design. And every time he brings something into your life, you're going to try to manipulate that and move that according to exactly how you want it to fit. And you want to build your story according to your own design, no matter what. And what you're saying to God at that point is, hey, great, you do whatever you want to do, but I'm going to make sure that I keep kind of control of how my story goes. And if you want to design my story, that's fine, but you're going to need to design it right here in these parameters and do exactly what I would like to have done in my story at the end. And guys, God does not design that way. God does not design that way. Many of you work for people that tell you to work like that. You do this much work, but you do it exactly how I say do it, when I say do it. How much fun is it working for those people? You don't have to say that out loud because they may be here. But here's the deal. Yeah, TK knows. But here's the deal. Like for my people that work for me, I want them to go and develop their stuff and do their thing according to what God has called them to do, not because of what I tell them to do. They have to design their own stories in their ministry areas. And for me, I've got to be able to lay it out there in a way that they can go do what they do best. You know what? When you say to God, God, you design my story, you have to allow him to do that. You have to allow him to design the tattoo that will be placed on your life from this day forward. But a lot of us have a lot of pride and a lot of ego and a lot of I'm better than God is, so I can design my own story. And we can't do it that way. What else is there? You got to make a commitment to get a tattoo. You got to accept his design. You got to make the point of making it permanent. A lot of people walk around in our world with the stencil, with the temporary, with the, hey, this will be on there a couple of days until you wash it off and then it's gone. You know what? That's not a relationship with Christ. That may be a relationship with a church somewhere. That may be a relationship with a neat group of people someplace. That may be hey, I've done some good things for some good people and I've helped out in my area. Because until you give your life totally to Jesus Christ, you're not making your story permanent. And what goes through making a story permanent? What's going through Randy's story becoming permanent? We having problems again? Oh, I'm sorry. What's going through Randy's story becoming permanent right now? Number one, there's some pain involved. Randy, tell us about the pain. Feels like you stuck your hand in a beehive. You know he's working on your shoulder, right? So he's moving the pain mentally to his hand because he doesn't want to focus on that. Do you know what? Let me tell you, this relates because how many of you would say, and you don't have to raise your hand on this, but your story at some point has involved pain. Who you are today has involved pain at some point in your life. And I would be willing to bet this, and most of you, whether you say it out loud or not, or think it even really in your own mind, most of us, when we see what God has done in us today, we wouldn't take the pain away from years ago. Because you know, bless you, that you had to go through the pain to get to the story. And you had to go through what you went through to become who you are today. But you know what? Pain ain't no fun ever when you're going through it. Is it, Randy? See? It's just not. You don't ever wake up in the morning and go, man, life is terrible. I'm loving it. You don't wake up and go, man, he left and I don't know what to do. She left and I don't know what to do. My kids are doing this and that and they don't care anymore. I don't know what to do. Oh, this is fantastic. You don't do that. But you know what? As part of your story, some of it's going to hurt. You know what else I figured out is as part of your story, sometimes other people are involved. Wes, have you ever given a tattoo to yourself? He says, no. You know why? Because sometimes other people's actions will affect your story. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. But other people in your life will affect your story. And other people will make you do things and be things you never thought you would do or be. Other people will tell you things that you're not and lie to you and say that you're not this or you are that or whatever. Other people will cause pain in your life. And that pain becomes a part of your story. And I want you to understand that because many of you have been through that and you've seen it happen. You've watched it take place. And you know without a doubt that there have been other people involved. And I want you to hear something from me tonight. I understand the whole concept of now I've got to figure out how to forgive them and all that kind of stuff. Listen, that's not the message for now. We'll talk about that at some other point. The truth is, no matter what they've done to you, or no matter what they said about you, or said to you, or did in your life, God can use it to develop your story. God is using it to make your story permanent and to make your story something that he can use to grow his kingdom. But you got to watch this process, and there's pain involved. As Randy's told us, there's another person involved. As Wes said, he would never, ever do a tattoo on himself, obviously. Another thing that's involved is time. And the way it's working tonight, it's going to take about 4 hours, I believe, is what we're seeing here. So that's going to be good, though. But the situation is your story takes time. How many of you have ever been in a situation in your life where there was pain involved? Maybe it was even caused by another person, and you wanted it over instantly. Nobody? One person thinks that's funny. The rest of us are like, I ain't raising my hand. I'm tired of that. How many of you have things in your life that are get real painful and everything's hurting and everything's terrible and you just pray, God, let this last a little longer? That's not the situation. Every time we have pain, every time we have tough times, we want them to end as quickly as possible. And you know what? Your story takes time. I don't care what you want. I don't care what I want. It does not matter. Why? Because if your story was written about one few minutes of your life, then your story wouldn't be who you truly are. Your story would simply be this part, and it wouldn't be the full development of what God's trying to make in you. So your story is going to take time. And sometimes that means that it's going to hurt for a while. Sometimes that means it's going to take longer than you thought it was going to take. Sometimes it's going to take time when you didn't really expect to give that time. But you need to understand that as you walk through the crud that we call life every day, God is developing your story in you. And He'll take as long as He needs to take to make that story happen. Last thing, in order to make it permanent, is you've got to do what Randy has done tonight. You've got to put your ultimate trust in the artist. True? I mean, when he sat down in this chair and when Wes took off started, he had to trust Wes, that Wes knows what he's doing, right? How many of you have ever had a tattoo, really? Just raise your hand for me. Have you ever got in the chair and somebody started working on you and you thought, I bet this guy has no idea what he's doing? Yeah? Some of you are like, yeah, I know. They didn't come to you though, Wes. They were all with some other guy. He didn't know what he was doing. But when you sit down to get a tattoo, at that point, you trust the person doing that tattoo on your arm. You have to. And you know what you got to do in life? If you're going to let God design your story, you got to trust the author. And you got to trust the artist and the one designing that story for you. Because if you don't, you'll never get the privilege of seeing what He can develop in you. You just won't. And we love to try to get things done faster, and we love to try to get things done around pain, and we love to try to get things done. Hey, God, just develop my story and just make it all really easy, and I'll tell my story all the time. But you know what? The truth is you won't. Because your story tells itself. And if you don't go through what you need to go through to develop that story, you'll never get the story told. Last thing in that section about what does it take for us to get the tattoo, the whole ultimate trust in the artist deal. Here it is for Randy's sake right now. Philippians 4, 6, and 7 says, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He's done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. Take a message. Here it is, guys. If you want to live in peace in the midst of the junk world that you go through every day, you got to trust God. And if you trust Him, He'll give you the kind of peace that we just talked about in Scripture. If you can't trust Him, He can't develop your story. And if He can't develop your story, then you'll live the rest of your life wondering what it's all about. And you won't know. See, Jeremiah 29:11 says that God's got a plan for us. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you. They're plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Guys, listen to me. As God develops a story in you, you need to understand that His plans and His story is for your success and not your failure. The plan for you is for you to be successful. Is that hurting now or something? Got more energy? Yeah, you get half across that way, buddy. You got to allow Him to tell it and do it and develop it in you, because His plan's better than your plan. And let me tell you the last thing, and then we're going to let the band do one more as he finishes up. The last thing you need to do with your story is show it off. See, a lot of people, in your life, you're like, man, people have been telling me all the time, I need to be a witness for God. I need to be telling everybody about Jesus. You know what the number one thing is that a person needs? If they don't know Jesus, they need your story. They don't need your canned response. They don't need you, hey, here's my little tract that they gave me to give out, and I'm giving this to you, and I don't know what it says either, so you read it, and maybe it'll change you. That's what we do when we don't want to tell our story. Do you know what the people in your neighborhood need? You know what the people at your workplace need? You know what the people that you go to school with need? They need to hear your story. And until you're willing to show off the story that God told you, Rachel Pinocchio told her story last week for the first time ever in a large group like this. And you know what? Some of you, as you were dealing with that and listening to that, you were thinking, man, if that was my story, I wouldn't tell it. And you know what? If you don't tell your story, God can't use your story. And every one of you have one. And every one of you need to get past this idea of, man, my story's just not worth it. My story's not good enough. My story's this, and God can't use me anymore. You know what? Listen. God has developed a story in you. And God needs you to share that story with the people around you. And if you don't, he can't use it. Well, Jared, nobody would ever listen to my story. Somebody is sitting with you somewhere that is sitting there because they need your story. And I cannot tell you the number of times I've had somebody tell me, man, I just started telling my story, and it was like God just put them there on purpose because they were the perfect person for my story. Yeah, that's what God does. It's almost like he's got a plan that's better than your plan. And if you'll tell your story, he'll use your story. If you sit around for the rest of your life going, my story's nothing. I didn't really do this. I didn't do that. You know, I hadn't been perfect all my life. You know what? God's using you and your story to change people for his kingdom forever. But if you sit there with your mouth shut and never open your mouth to tell your story, nobody can ever be changed because of it. You need to know that. You need to understand that God has developed it in you to be shown off. You're not getting a tattoo put on your body so you can never show anybody. The majority of them you get put on there, you get put all over your back, you get put on your arm, you get put someplace, and you want to show people, this is what I stand for. Big Daddy got Jesus all the way up and down his arm because everybody that sees him riding his motorcycle sees Jesus. The same thing should be true in your life. As you are living in front of people, they should see Jesus. But he's got to be the one that develops the story. Band's going to do one more. I'll come back and finish up in just a minute. Guys, I want to remind you, make sure you have, number one, committed to give God control of your story. Accept his design over your design because it's better. And then allow him the privilege of taking you through the pain, the time, using other people, whatever it takes for him to get you to a point where totally and completely you trust him more than you trust yourself. And if you'll do that, he'll develop a story in you that you cannot keep from telling. And it'll show, just like the tattoo is going to show when Randy's done.